Hello, people. Recording is in progress. Thank you, Colin. So for people who are watching the recording, not at the meeting, we have a new document, which is gathering together links and making it easy to find the links as we are working on accomplishing our objectives. And we will have 4 objectives for each team and each project over the summer. 1 is learn. 2 is get a version that we feel good about of the manual in the cloud onto Wikiversity, where the public will benefit from it, specifically the practice and research communities, not the general public. Our 3rd objective is to take that manual and send it for peer review. Our 4th objective is to do a data paper and send it to a traditional journal and probably also co-publish it with a wiki journal. We have this document written for the general behavior inventory. The water carriers for each of the other 3 projects can copy this document, paste this document, and adapt it for your measure. The goal of learning, exactly the same for all of the groups. The goal of writing the manual, getting it onto Wikiversity, the procedure will be the same. The details of what's the name of the page and and where are we putting the working drafts and things like that, that is free to differ, but the process is going to be the same. The 3rd goal of submit the manual for peer review, the process again will be the same, but the details should be different. The last of, let's take a statistical method and apply it to the data. For 3 of the 4 projects, that also will be probably same code, just change the variables that were pointed at to do it. And it'll be the same framework for the paper. We have a couple examples of those papers already. The GBI, for technical reasons, is probably going to deviate a little bit from the script here. And I telegraphed that 2 weeks ago, saying, other teams, if you feel like the GBI has an unfair head start, an advantage or whatever, let's do a little cognitive behavioral therapy. It's so cool that they're ahead on these things, and we'll have good working examples that we can learn from and borrow and adapt. And karma is going to come around, because the GBI is not going to be very cooperative for a couple of the analyses that are going to work really well for the other ones. So don't be jealous, be prepared to be supportive and share back when the going gets tough with some of the GBI analyses. So that that was a lot. Questions?
Yeah, we were looking at the data, and we were wondering. Actually, we found that we only have 59 groups that 59.
This was Safa speaking.
Yes, I don't know where she went, but she was saying that there's only 59 people who identified as transgender.
Yes,
that's a lot of people though, right?
It is, but for some analyses, the reason, so Safa is the quant student, and she's like, it really would be better if it was over 100.
Since the age group is
one of the, I know what she's gonna say, so I might just say it. We were wondering, instead of looking at gender, if we could look at across age or age groups instead. I guess like we could make, I know it's more of a continuous variable, but we could make it where it's age groups, where you make it like pediatric, emerging adults, and
Yeah,
then maybe geriatric.
I'd be very open to that. I don't want to force everybody to look at gender or any other variable. What I'm trying to do is make it so that it's as simple as possible and still achieve the goals of having you guys learn and having you have something that would be potentially publishable in a peer-reviewed journal. The reason that you guys are spending the kind of time that you're spending is particularly for that brass ring of, I want to add something to my CV. SAFA it understands the stuff well enough to be like, less than 100 is going to be a problem getting it through peer review.
Yeah.
That was 59 as of half a year ago. I haven't had a chance to look and see how many more people have we gotten, how many more people in that category. But I do know it's only a matter of time before we get over 100 in that category. So one solution is just go ahead and write it now, have the code ready, and keep doing updates to see when we get there. And there are variations on that where we could actually try to boost traffic by asking DBSA, could we announce that we're running a campaign to get more representation of non-binary gender? And the second is pivot to a different variable. I'm totally good with that. Only thing that you lose with that is that Scotty raised her hand almost a month ago to be like, I'll be in charge of gathering resources and specifically articles about what do we know about measurement and gender. And Grace is very interested in this as a topic. And so Grace, I'm seeing smiling and nodding. So I'm betting that Grace and Scotty will gather a bunch of stuff really quickly. And I lined up Dr. Alana Sager at Yale has said that she'll send us references and a goodie bag. So when we look at the Zotero groups, we have people building that. If you guys pivot to a different variable, that's totally fine. On my list of things to do is also look at age differences. And so very, very open to it. I would say let's not commit to that yet. Let's see how fast they gather the goodie bag for the others. If you guys want to start gathering the reviews and other things, it's just add another project in Zotero. But as much as possible, I'm trying to force myself to stay focused so that you guys have a win. Other questions? All right, Colin, is it set so that other people can share screens?
Yes, it should be.
People that have the bandwidth on their computers, open your RStudio and pull up your alphas, your runs.
My backpack.
So Seifa probably had the same reaction that Guillermo did when I shared the code with him. He said if I was optimizing my code, I should put all of the packages that I am going to use in a session together up at the top. So one of his pieces of feedback to me was you got a chunk of packages up here, and then you're adding more packages later. And then you're adding the same packages over and over again. So I took the code for the psychosis measure, and I cleaned it up and edited it for you guys. And I copied and pasted it over and over again and said, here's the code for John and the HCL group. Here's the code for SAFA and the PHQ-9. Here's the code for Wilson and Colin and the scared. And then I'm like, I have no data for the GBI group yet. And that sent me down a multi-hour rabbit hole to pull the data together. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to write the code to pull in the GBI items. And so the packages which I used to pull the data in, and then the alphas, especially the library psych and the running the alpha thing, the library psych, I put up at the top here, like would be best practices, but then I repeated it over and over in the other code, and I knew I was doing that. What I still don't have a good feel for is whether it's better for teams for me to have a part of the code that is for everybody and other parts that are customized for each of the teams. So if Grace took this and she's like, I'm going to keep lines 12 to 20 because that's relevant to me. And then I'm going to delete line 25 because that's a PHQ-9. Ew. And I'm going to delete line 26 because that's the scared. And but I keep line 27, and that would be one use case. And in that scenario, that I'm chunking the code. So the PHQ-9 people could be like, yeah, that's my chunk, I'm keeping that chunk. And Grace could be like, I'm nuking the whole chunk, and she doesn't have to read it line by line. So that was my rationale. The conversation with Guillermo, if we were going to put this up on the web, what I think I will do instead in a version 3 would be labeling these chunks apply regardless of what measure you're working with, and then come down and be like, this chunk is an example of applying it to one measure. And then another chunk, here is an example of what that would look like applied to a second measure. So you can see what changed, what is different. And then if I were writing a textbook, right, what a textbook author would say is, we leave the other measures as an exercise to the reader. And have you be like, okay, I'm supposed to figure it out. Engage brain. Did people have other questions or other feedback about the code?
You know, sometimes I don't put all packages in the beginning though, because some of them will mask other packages. And so I don't want it to be masked until later.
Yep.
So sometimes
You know the double colon trick?
no. Is that for tidyverse?
No, it's for anything in R. You can write the code in a way that forces it to pick the procedure from a specific package. So what Emma just said is something that you will run into more often in R or Python than any other statistics program you might ever use. So the reason we're using it is because it's an open access software, and it's and other people are contributing new packages to it. And like Wikipedia, it is incredible how much there is in it that everybody is contributing for free. This is all volunteers, all people sharing with each other out of altruism. But so, and that's 90% awesome, but the 10% inconvenient is that if you have, imagine John's working on a package, and John's in New York State, and Kelsey also is working on a package in Ireland, and they're both working on their packages, and they're actually doing different things, but they both have a feature in them which they decide to call alpha. And alpha is one of the most overused Greek letters in the world of statistics. Everybody's like, I want to give it an English letter. I'll do Greek. That looks fancy. And this is the first thing that I want to give a Greek name. And so they call it alpha. So we got way too many things called alpha. So Kelsey's package does an alpha. John's package does an alpha. They are not the same alpha. They're not intended to do the same thing. And if you load Kelsey's package and John's package, and you tell R, hey, R, do alpha, it's like you didn't tell me which one to use. I've got more than one I could pick. And in the warnings that it gives you at the beginning, when you load all your packages, you may have noticed a whole bunch of warnings going by that R is basically barfing, like, okay, I got everything ready, but just so you know, these 7 all use alpha, and this one and buried in the fine print, it's like, if you don't tell me which one to use, I'm using Kelsey's because I think Ireland is cool. And so Emma's like, so I sometimes save a package when I've encountered conflicts. I don't call it until I need it. But there is a trick in this code that it sounds like may be exciting and new and fresh for Emma, which is awesome, where you can tell it, I mean alpha from John's package, not Kelsey's package, and you can have both loaded at the same time. Other questions? We're getting to really cool stuff very quickly, I promise. All right, so what I want to do is get to having Thursday nights be breakout rooms and moving on stuff in groups, have it be more office hours. What tonight has turned into is more me throwing a huge amount of information at you quickly, trying to get things more organized, and it's more on lecture. And in the interest of time, I'm inclined to just run with that and actually show you for each group. So I asked you guys to open R, and I asked you to load the stuff. And what I was thinking was, let's pass the baton and have John show the HCL output, have Kelsey show the GBI output, have Colin show the scared output. And we could try to do that. We're going to lose a couple minutes with the passing, the screen sharing around, but that'll be a change of voice. That'll give you guys a break from just listening to me. That is where I want to try to get us. Do you guys want to try that? Or do you want, I've got the code to run everything. So we could do it all with me, or if you want to hear other people talk, we can pass it around. Thumbs up for pass it around. Thumbs up for just let the bald guy roll. All right, let's try pass it around. Let's see how it goes. Which group has somebody ready to show their output?
I can go.
Go. I will stop share. Coming from Ireland, we're going to look at some GBI data.
Yeah, and all the credit goes to Nick and Billette because they worked on it this morning and helped me this afternoon. So it's been like 3 years since I've opened R. But yeah, so for the GBI items, there actually wasn't a chunk of code, Eric, for the GBI alpha. So we switched it from the PHQ-9 information by swapping it out. And
Nice.
we ended up running it for both the adolescent self-report and the parent report as once, but we can create little tag codes for just the adolescent self-report and just the parent GBI later. But that's what we ended up running the alpha for. And so,
Oh, interesting. That never would have occurred to me to do. I think that didn't do what you think it did.
I think it also didn't do what I think it did. So I was planning on rerunning it later, but that is what they had done this afternoon, which works well enough.
I'm really glad you said that.
it did run the alpha stuff here, but it ran it, as you can see, like as if it was one measure, and it's technically two measures. So I think it needs to be redone for each of them
It does.
separately.
It does.
But in terms of the mechanics, we did the mechanics properly, I'm pretty sure, in terms of getting it all to run.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I actually read that. No, I just basically I just separated like by HGBI and PGBI and run them separately. And
Oh, did you? Great, then Balette. Nick just went over them together with me. So do you want to share it instead?
Don't
You're better statistically.
don't jump over to bullets yet. You don't have to share screens again, but I want to see, do other people, so Ellen, Nick, do you understand what just happened? Nick's nodding most vigorously. Please explain.
I mean, at least what I think you're looking for is the AGBI and the PGBI are two separate measures. We ran it together as if it were one measure. So we're
Yep.
taking alpha for something that doesn't actually exist.
Correctamundo. So how many items on the GBI?
73.
73,
How many on the thing that they just created?
more than
73 times
73.
2.
yeah,
146.
140 something. Yeah.
146. Right. And so here too, this is like the second time tonight where I'm like, what I want you guys to learn enough to be like, something doesn't seem right, something doesn't smell right. The output for this didn't make it easy to see how many items did it include. It wasn't until she started scrolling down and I'm like, oh yeah, they're all on the same list. There were a couple other tells for me in the output that she showed. So clues to me. So looking at the code, I was like, oh, she showed me the code and I'm like, oh, I don't think that's going to do what we wanted it to do. And then when she showed me the output and we saw more than 73 items, I'm like, yeah, that the third tell for me, almost impossible for you guys to smell out. The N was too small. Because we only tortured people with the GBI if they were old enough to read reasonably well, and it still was torture. It's a 12th grade reading. It's a 12th grade reading level, and we're handing it to 11-year-olds. And they're like, I'm in 5th grade, and we're like, good luck, kid. If you have questions, we'll read it to you. So one of the purposes of the research was to see how low could you go and still do this. So the N of 444, I'm like, nah, for the parent stuff, the N should be well over 1,000. For the self-report stuff, it should have been bigger than that. So what we have is the cross between the two. So those were 3 tells. And the mistake in the code, very easy for me to make still. You guys have seen exactly how splendidly I type. So a typo is pretty much guaranteed. So the things that I want you to learn are how do you do a quick common sense check? How do you learn what some of the common mistakes look like? So that was a beautiful that was a beautiful learning moment. So Balette, you ready to share screens and unmute?
Well, I can, but but I think there's something not very good here. Okay, I'll share screen, and also like I actually have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you see here, basically I think what may be different for everyone is here. It's just what you select here because you are making a GBI items and all the other thing is right. But the thing happened here is when you check here, you all see like there are like 76 for PGBI. I don't know why it is not, but I still make it an item. And
good on you for noticing that.
I don't know why, so that's my question.
I do.
And yeah, so for PGBI, it runs like this. It has the raw alpha, standard deviation, things like that. So it is for this thing. And if I change it to, I didn't say that.
And so Billet's code is different from Kelsey's in two ways. Billet's using tidyverse. And Kelsey, were you using tidyverse? You had the concatenate wrapper around the item list.
I was using whatever was already in the PHQ9 because I just
Yeah, so
followed
that also probably was tidyverse. I think it would have worked the same way without the C around it. So Billet's code line 41 is but
It is in 1 second.
I think that's not going to work either because you didn't change the name of the no, that will it's just going to overwrite the other one.
Yeah, that's the reason why I hesitated before I shared my screen. Because I just
go back to line 41. I'm like all proud of myself that I'm like reading R quickly with Chase and Grace in the house. So GBI is the item frame. And then in tidyverse, the first word in the select parentheses is the data frame. And then the rest is the variables that you want selected. And you can use a colon in between the two. The colon behavior, I talked about this in 525. The colon behavior is a little bit unexpected. A human being reads that as look for something named AGBI 01 and then gather everything in between that and what is implied by AGBI 73. So mentally, we're like, that would be AGBI 02, 03, 04, all the way up to 73. The way that R is reading it is like two addresses in the data file. Start at this column and then snag everything all the way over to the end column. So you're defining bookends, not a logical list. Sometimes the data has the items out of order. This is going to happen if you guys have to recode some of the items. If items are reverse keyed, like Seifa thought might have happened with one of the PHQ items. So if you recode some, you may start off with the 73 in order and then take 20 of them and be like, these are the 20 that I have to flip, and then wind up further over on the right. And so if you go start here and here, you're going to miss the recoded ones. And if you go from the beginning to the end of the recoded ones, now you're going to have 93 items instead of 73. So the colon is awesome, except for when it backfires. The way that there are other sort of workarounds where you could rearrange, if you're good with R, you could rearrange the data file. You could make a new frame that only has the ones that you want. There's several different ways of solving the problem. All right, show us the output.
Okay, I don't think I need to run the, okay, it seems that I need to. Okay, I just rerun, I click here to rerun the code above, so I can run this without having any errors. And so here, wait for it for a second. It is being slow because like, yeah.
Well, and why it's being slow is this n iter equals 1000. Anybody know what that's doing?
Nope.
The technical name for it is Bootstrap Resampling. So it's doing some really fancy shit. It's taking your data set and it's treating it like a deck of cards, and it's drawing a case out and building a new data set, taking your 1,000 people and being like, okay, we're going to make a new data set. What's case number 1? And it's going to randomly pick one. And this is bootstrapping with replacement. So it randomly picks one, looks at the score, writes it down, puts it back, shuffles again, and then it picks the second one and adds, here is the second score in my new data set, puts it back, shuffles again, and draws another one. And it builds if you have a data set with 1,096 cases, it will build you a clone with 1,096 cases randomly selected from the true data. It doesn't stop there, it repeats. How many times would you guess Bolette just asked it to repeat?
1,000 times.
Correct. Pause and think about that. The R's like, hang on, and Bolette's like, Jesus, R, please, come on. Could you finish already? And it's like, this is taking a little time. I'm doing 1,000 samples for you. And so this is in all your statistics classes so far, they're like, if we can make some assumptions, if we can assume that the data are normally distributed, if we can, this method is like, we're going to forget all assumptions. We're going to do a non-parametric method. And this idea has been around for decades. The reason that we haven't done it is because it's too much work. And you guys are like, hey, with R, I can just add this n.iter equals, and if Bolette typed 1,000,000, it would be like, okay, and it would do 1,000,000 resamples for, instead of 1,000, it would take 1,000 times as long as it just did. So this is a brute force method that lets us brag in our articles. Everyone else runs alpha. We did a bootstrapped re-estimation to get more accurate estimates and confidence intervals. And people would be like, dang, how'd you do that? And you're like, oh, well, I used R. You're probably using SPSS. Too bad, so sad. So that's why it took a little while. And we'll see, you could run it with that turned off and it'll run a whole lot faster, about 1,000 times faster. All right, so we got a raw alpha, we got a standardized alpha. Those are not significantly different from each other, like not different to 3 decimals. The rule of thumb that everyone else would use is it bigger than 0.8? If it's bigger than 0.8, we're good. Is that bigger than 0.8? Yeah, we're extra good. Do we have Logan? We do not have Logan on the Zoom. When Logan emailed me his output, he said, here it is, that's really high. And he said, that's so high, somebody should make a short form. Which was a very, very, very inside joke, because that's what we've done. But most of the world is like alpha. So a perfect alpha would be what number?
0.7.
A perfect alpha
1.
would be a 1. And what's the lowest that alpha could get?
0. That's not
Zero,
good, though.
zero would be horrendous.
Yeah.
It actually is possible to get a negative alpha. It's not, the formula doesn't work for it to get all the way to a -1, like other correlation coefficients. So nobody exactly knows how stanky it could get. But 0 would be horrendous, and it's possible to be even worse than that. And I have seen it in the wild.
But what's acceptable for psychology is a 0.7,
most
right?
No, and most people learn a 0.8, and then other people have tried to get stuff through peer review, being like, oh, 0.7 is okay. And I have done that sometimes myself. And if you ever need a reference that 0.7 is okay, I have a book that I've got the citation for you if you need it. But the problem with alpha, so what alpha is, if you read the Guion or you look up reliability on Wikipedia, alpha is a measure of a particular kind of reliability. What kind? Rachel's lips were moving, but I wasn't looking for the whole thing. Internal consistency in the chat. So the main kinds of reliability that I want you guys to think about and know about are internal consistency. Are all the items basically measuring the same thing? What are some other ones? Two more.
Inter-rater reliability.
Iterator and retest. So iterator would be if we asked two different people, would we get the same scores? And that matters a lot with like diagnostic interviews and severity measures. Internal consistency is when we ask a bunch of questions, are we all always measuring the same thing? And alpha is the estimate of the average of every possible combination of split halves. So if we had 32 items on the HCL, imagine taking 1 to 16 and looking at the correlation with 17 to 32, and then looking at the correlation of odd with even, and then looking at every other possible combination. Again, not hard to do, but really, really tedious, right? So again, pause and respect the power of R, where you're like, yeah, bring me an alpha. It's like you realize that I have to look at every possible split half correlation, and yeah, do it. Do I have to ask you twice? Please bring me an alpha. And then Ballet is like, oh yeah, and another thing, bootstrap it 1,000 times. And R's like, okay, here's your output. So in theory, each of those types of reliability would have a particular place in the universe. Alpha is the one that gets reported the most. Is it because it is the coolest? No. Is it because it's the most useful? No. Is it because it is the most commonly appropriate? No, it's in the chat. It's because it's the easiest. So it's what everybody reports because it is the cheapest, easiest, it's the laziest one. And one of the papers that I want to send you guys is one, I call it the too good to be true paper, where I go on a mini rant about why is everybody reporting alpha? Like, this is stupid. If you're trying to figure out how severe is somebody's depression, alpha is not relevant. If you're trying to figure out, does this graduate student know how to do the interview the right way? Alpha is not relevant. So, and even worse than that, alpha is the only thing that we're thinking about. We make dumb choices. So slackers and badly trained people who have excellent intentions look at alpha and they're like, okay, does this basically measure one thing? Above a 0.8 would be pretty good. A 1 is perfect. We got a 0.98. That's freaking close to the max. That's really, really high. And another mistake that people have made in published literature in the field is saying the alpha was really high, so I can assume that this is measuring one thing. So they use a high alpha as a substitute for a factor analysis. How many things is the GBI measuring?
Depends on your level of specificity, but at least mood disorders and bipolar related disorders.
Mostly bipolar, right? So mania and depression, right?
So two things. If I wanted you to just give a number and not do a lot of write-in justification qualifying your answer,
20.
you're thinking parcels. So so probably not one. So even after we looked at Kelsey's, oops, put 146 items together, we probably only want to put 73 together. Looking at the alpha from the 73, we're like, yeah, that's really high. That's super internally consistent. But that probably are, if we concluded this is just measuring one thing, that's probably a mistake. That's weird because the statistic is supposed to be telling us, is this all basically measuring the same thing? The problem is that the formula for alpha includes the number of items in it. And the more items you feed it, all things being equal, it's going to be higher the more items you give it. So this is the first scale that we have looked at tonight, looking at the output. But if we think about the number of items on the scales, which scale of the 4 at the party tonight is longest? GBI has 73. HCL 32 has
32.
32 in the core set, 33, right? And the PHQ-9 has 10, but 9 in the core set that we would look at for the alpha. I'm really loving this part of the format because you guys are like, oh yeah, I see what you're thinking. And Billette at the beginning of this is like, the parent version has extra items on it. The self-report only had 73, but the parent one has a 74, 75, 76. Eric, do you know what is up with that? I'm like, yes, I do. And John, to Team HCL's credit, is like, well, it depends. If you're looking at the impairment question, then and the PHQ-9 group is like, well, if you already got us once with that, it doesn't matter what you answered, it was going to be a trick question either way. No, there's an impairment question on that one too.
But wouldn't that operate as a moderator or a like, for instance, the 10th one asking about like how, like how difficult is this making your life, or like the work, or your work and relationships with family and friends? Won't that operate as like a moderator or a what's the other M word?
Mediator.
Mediator. You can use it like that.
We might be able to model it that way. Colin, do you know how many items are on the scared?
40 something. I can check real quick.
Yeah, I think it's 44, but I don't remember
Should
off the
be.
top of my head either.
I think it's 44.
So if this was going to be a contest and we wanted bragging rights for whose scale, okay, gang, which of your 4 houses in the house cup has the highest alpha for your measure? We haven't looked at the others yet, but based on what I just told you, the GBI once again has an unfair advantage because it's got more items, and the PHQ-9 is the shortest scale, right? 73, 44, 32, and 9. And it's got the least. So that's not fair. And the GBI team walking around like, that's right, we bad, we alpha, we are the alpha of all of these measures. And the PHQ-9 being like, nah, alpha is a dumb metric. It's contaminated by N. If we build short forms, they're going to have fewer items. What's going to happen to the alpha of the short form? it's going to go down. And this is one of the reasons why I went on a rant that alpha is a dumb thing for us to be using as our main measure of reliability. Because when I ask clinicians to use the GBI, they're like, I would, but it's too damn long. And my wife told me, make a short form. If you make a short form, I will use it. If you expect me to use something that is 12th grade reading level and 10 pages long, no. So the clinicians are telling me, you got to make a short form. And I'm like, if I do know ahead of time, the alpha is not going to look as good. It can't, because the N is baked into the formula.
I have a question, and this is gonna, I know that the question in itself might be wrong, but like, I've used this before called R drop, and with R drop, it has to do with like the
If you throw the item out, how much does the alpha decrease?
yeah, and then that's how you know which ones are, that's how you can do factor analysis, or helps with factor analysis of knowing like the groupings and like how much of them or the weight of each item that is affecting the alpha, and how, if all of them are on base, or if they or this item has obviously nothing to do with what
my
the
feelings
other questions are asking.
about that are complicated. It is a good way to go if you're going to shorten scales a little bit. But there's a mistake that I worry about with it too. So remember the R drop. Can we see the output again?
Yeah, let me
just
rerun it. You know, I'm doing some turning off stuff to make it look better. So
I understand it also would only really matter if there's only like one factor that it's all loading, if all those items are loading onto. So if it's only testing for like, let's say just
here,
depression, and if nothing's like reverse coded.
Yep. So so we've got the raw alpha, we've got the standardized alpha, which is if you converted all the items to z-scores. In this case, it doesn't make a big difference. We've got G6, which I didn't know about until I started using the psych package. G6 is my new favorite. I think that it's the coolest thing. I'm always going to report it in my papers going forward.
Where's the G6?
Right.
Oh, okay. I see.
So it's an, people won't know what it is. But the way that I would use it would be, I would report the alpha, and I would also report the G6 and be like, and it's cooler. And then I would cite somebody to make the case why it's cooler. G6 is cooler if you think that your item set has more than one factor in it.
Oh.
And we think that the GBI has more than one thing going on in it.
Yeah.
With the HCL, John, based on the literature with the HCL, would you guess that it's just measuring one thing? Or
I would not.
Energy and mood.
Right. So G6 should be better than the alpha for it too. Colin, do you know how many things the scared is likely to be measuring?
No clue.
So the scared, and the way to answer all of these questions, Billet's question, what's up with items 74, 75, 76? The way that I answered it was find a PDF of a version that has items 74, 75, 76, and read them and think about what that means. The way that we looked at the PHQ-9 and are like, egads, it has 10 items. What up with that? The way that we figured out what's going on with item 10 is we found the original, we found the source document in the jargon, and we looked at item 10 and we're like, oh, that's an impairment item. And John and the HCL team, the way that John knew that some of these are not like the others, and Grace knows this too. Grace is a student of the HCL, and her whole poster was focused on some off-road items that they're not part of the core 32. She's like, but they're cool. I want to look at them. And same as if you roll into a restaurant, if you're really familiar with the restaurant and you really know exactly what you want, you can order off the menu. It's not on the list that other people are thinking about. But Grace is like, no, I would like an evening with the hypomania checklist, but not and so the average R is also a truckload of work. It is the average correlation of item 71 with the other 72 items. Also averaged with the correlation of item 2 with item 1 and items 3 to 73. And so it's taking every possible pair of items, correlating them, and then averaging the correlation for you. A gargantuan amount of work brought to you in a single number. And then a whole bunch of stuff that Ravel threw in that
wouldn't that not make sense to even use that if there's like more than one factor in the measure? Or am I thinking about this wrong?
No, you're right. You're right. And I thought about giving you guys the Big Five inventory data because that really has 5 factors and they're really not very correlated with each other. And so then we would see a very different pattern if we had more time.
This is probably higher for like PHQ-9. Or wait, if it's
so, and then the next block, click on the 73 by 8 data frame bullet, please. Scroll down the one, that one. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Average R, standard alpha.
Oh, okay.
And then the 73 by 7.
There's the R drop.
There's Emma's R drop.
Oh, look at number 7, yeah.
And the raw.R is the correlation of item 1 with the sum of all of the items, and the R drop is the correlation of item 1 with all of the items minus item 1.
Yeah, and what Caroline just said is right too.
And there's also an alpha with it dropped as well. So this is giving us a huge amount of output so that we can get to the other groups. What I'm going to repeat as we get to their output is most of the world just reports the alpha. You guys have a way of making your alpha cooler than everybody else's alpha. So the NITR 1000, everybody else reports an alpha. I reported a bootstrapped alpha, mic drop. But then I also have this thing that you've never even heard of, Gutman's Lambda 6, which technically is better if you're measuring more than one thing with your set of items. Emma's point of, well, if you're measuring more than one thing, isn't it kind of dumb to add it up to a total score? The answer is it depends. Maybe. The Colin and team scared, you've got separate scales for here's your phobia score, here's your general anxiety score, here's your all these different types of anxiety. But those of you that have had 500 with me, no, we're not sure that those are actually different disorders
Right.
versus it just being an anxiety dimension. So the scared is written so that it could go either way. If you want to treat these as separate things, here are the separate scores, or you could add them up into one super score. And the scared subscales we're going to see are going to be really highly correlated with each other, to the point of, are we sure we're measuring different things? The BFI, if we added up all 5 of those, then that would be like, and here's your global personality score, which would be 20% how extroverted are you, 20% how conscious. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean a blessed thing. So the should we add them up, should we not, actually is going to be, we got to turn our brains on again and think about what makes sense. And I've talked with clinicians who are like, yeah, I've talked with clinicians who are arguing both ways. Some are like, you know what, forget diagnoses. It's just how anxious are you? Just give me the total score on the scared. And other clinicians are like, no, Nick needs more help just with his specific phobia, and otherwise he's squeaky clean on the scared. And Eric is a hot mess that has elevations on everything. And so I'm going to need more sessions with Eric to get him straight. But Nick is going to be easy peasy. He just needs to do a little bit of exposure so that he's comfortable flying and he's groovy. All right, other key points are alpha. What's the biggest problem with alpha? It's got many. So you're like, where so many, which to pick? But for the purposes of looking at the scales tonight, what's the one that the other groups are like, oh yeah, I'm just waiting to cry foul?
The size of like the number of items.
Right. And statisticians are lazy. Those of you that have had 525 with me have heard me say that. So are they going to keep typing the number of items, the number of items? No, they're going to pick one letter to be like, how many items are we talking about anyway? Oh yeah, it is. If they picked N, that would be so confusing, because N is how many people do we have? So they're not going to pick N. Anybody know what they picked? K for the number of items. I have no idea why they picked K. It makes no sense, but they did. So we would say, oh yeah, GBI, are we looking at the K73 version? And when we make short forms, that's going to be really important, because that will be a very crisp way of saying this run had K equals 10. So this was a 10 item one. Does the reliability go up a lot, or if we add another, that would be the K11 permutation. So alpha is too hung up on K. So we're going to get high alphas, and it could mean the items are very consistent, very highly correlated with each other, which is what if alpha is a good choice, that's what we're trying to maximize, but it's also contaminated with K. The things that we're looking at here, the average item correlation, that is pure, how much is this item correlating with everything else? That's the good stuff. If the field was smart, we would be focusing on that instead. And that doesn't penalize short forms for being short, because K is not part of the formula. The why aren't we doing that? I don't know. This is like a law of gravity. This is like not up for debate. This is just the way the math works. So the reporting the average correlation, why I never did it until recently is because SPSS doesn't calculate it for you, but R does. And I'm like, okay, so if I get it in the output right away, It doesn't have the problem of being contaminated by K, by the number of items. And my wife and every clinician I talk to is like, bring me the shortest thing that works. Then we should be prioritizing reporting that. All right, what group is ready to show their output next? Rachel's got her hand up.
I can do it if no one from the HCL group has
Bring it.
hold up.
From
Okay.
Rochester Institute of Technology.
I'm in Chapel Hill right now.
I know, but your RCHOPs are from RIT.
Oh God.
Ooh.
Just one sec. So I'm actually zooming in from my tablet right now. So let me just open it up on my laptop where I actually have the R thing. That thing that kills my computer RAM every time I run it.
Ugh. Andrew did research for me and found a computer that he swears is good for coding. So hopefully I won't have that much problems in the future.
Oh, I'm about to build my own computer because I'm really sick of my computer just being like, nope, and dying. Oh, Colin, can you let me in? Thanks.
I have an Asus now. I've never had an Asus before.
I love mine.
Oh, yay! Andrew's gonna be so happy that I got a computer that you have. Well, the same brand. Mine says Sonic Master on it. Oh, look, it says RIT student in parentheses.
Okay, so we're looking at the R, right?
Yes, please.
So for R, I actually couldn't get it to run in the console up here, so I had to throw the results out down here. So it's not, I got an error up here saying that they couldn't find the command in the file directory pathway, and I tried to do a bunch of stuff and it just would not work.
Ooh,
I got mad. So I just like this thing and try to run it. This, yeah. So I threw
Output's
it
not
down
recognized
here,
as internal or external.
and then
Hey, so line 62, line 62 is supposed to fix that. So Emma, that's the double colon.
Yeah, that you said doesn't matter what packages
Right.
you have, so it doesn't
So
matter.
if you've got multiple packages that all have a thing called alpha,
Yeah.
writing the package name first and then 2 colons is telling R. First thing is the package, and then the second thing is what I want you to snag only from that package. Use Kelsey's version of alpha, not John's version of alpha, or vice versa. If you said Kelsey's and it was the default, ours like, I was going to do that anyway. But if you're like, no, John, : alpha, then it would use.
Yeah, so why is it not working?
I don't
Fuck if
know.
I know. That's above my.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out too, because yeah, Eric's exactly right. This should have fixed it, but I don't know. I'll
Yeah.
figure it out at some point.
Have you downloaded Psych?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured you had it.
Yeah, because it
What
ran in the
version?
console. I don't.
What-
I've never seen this before. I
Yeah,
don't know
I've
why.
never
Let's
seen
ignore
it
it.
either.
Let's ignore it.
What version of R are you using?
Let's ignore it and
Okay.
keep.
Yeah. So here are the results down here. You
In
got the raw
525,
alpha.
this is the rabbit hole that I went down too many times.
Yeah. Stack Overflow, get out. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Oh,
like
wow,
Eric
yeah.
was saying, the G6 went up because we have more than one factor. The factor analyses ran up here really nicely. We got 2 factors based off the exploratory factor analysis and the screen plots and stuff.
Do you guys think the 2 factors are like energy and mood, or you don't know yet?
I actually don't know anything about the HCL. I just ran the code. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
But if someone else from the group who knows more about the measure could answer, I'd be very appreciative.
All right. So go let's go through this slightly more slowly. So their alpha was a 0.88. The Grace, did you get the same number? John?
I didn't
All right.
look too closely at my output, but I can check right now.
Did you also get an alpha of 0.88?
Yeah.
I also
did
checked
too.
it with SPSS, and I also got it on
Yep.
SPSS.
Okay.
Wow,
Excellent.
okay.
So what we're seeing is substantially lower than what we just saw with the GBI. It is a bigger difference than you guys even know, because you haven't looked at hundreds or thousands of alphas. So this is a huge drop. The number of items is less than half. So that makes some sense. The second thing that I want to call out here is this is the first time where I asked two people, did you run the analyses and get the same numbers? That's exactly what we want to do. That's exactly what we want to do as a group. So you guys are charged with all running the same thing. And if we were social loafers, we would put our feet up and be like, I don't actually have to do that this week because John's going to do it and we're going to have the number for our team and that's going to short circuit our first objective, which is learning. If you guys put up your feet and just let somebody else do it and you're like, sweet, train kept rolling, you're not learning. I can't. So my quick way of trying to push you to learn a little bit was email me the output. Now I haven't had time. I've been out in the woods. I haven't had time to build a table. Like, did everybody email me their output? And I'm not grading you guys. So if I was grading you guys, then it's supposed to be on me as the professor to be like, did everybody fucking email me the output and then I put it in Sakai and so one solution could be water carriers, do a head count. Did your whole team all do their stuff? That would be awesome. For the purpose for 3 out of 4 of our objectives, we don't have to do that. But if the water carriers do that, that actually is being your friend because they're helping you learn more. And if you're like, I tried, but I couldn't do it, like Rachel just had the error with the code, you guys can problem solve. And so that would be excellent, but that's exhibit A of where I need your help to maximize the learning. Really, really important to me. But with all the other things that I'm juggling and how I'm not in control of my dog and other things in my life, I'm like, I need help. So that's a place to help.
Vince is gonna come back a changed man.
He's definitely not going to be as picky an eater. The getting 2 factors, Rachel scrolled through a bunch of stuff. She ran the code further down. I don't know how many of you did, but several people have, and they're like, Eric, your code all worked, which is awesome, and it still worked on other people's installations, and so that's great. So all the rest of your code will work, and what Rachel flashed us very, very quickly is a whole bunch of results, and she knows what she's looking at. And so she's like, it looks like 2 multiple lines of evidence point towards 2. The rest of you guys, I haven't given the articles to know how to interpret all the stuff that she interpreted, how she learned. Was it working with Kristen?
No, my honors thesis.
And your honors thesis. So she did an honors thesis with me, and we did a ton of going deep on factor analysis. Those of you that have the Andy Fields book, the chapter on factor analysis does a good job of explaining a lot of the stuff. I disagree with a couple of the technical nuances, but overall, it's a really good basic chapter. Some of the code that I gave you guys is fancier than what's in the Fields book. So can you show the thing with the parallel analysis and the scree plot?
The scree plot here.
Yeah, that one. So, so this one provides strong support for 2, maybe 3 even, actually, as I'm looking at it. So we've got the
So 1, 2, 3. That's what the little dots
Yep.
are indicating there.
Yep. So, and this is my first time looking at this with the HCL. And this is kind of a cool teaser for next week. Go ahead and run the factor analysis stuff and come with that output ready to discuss.
This is just the 32 items, not the ones that Grace played with also.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so so for you guys working on these measures, you have a safety net, and Billette invoked the safety net very early on. There are 3 extra items on the parent GBI. Do you know why? Yes. And I will not let you guys publish something with those treated the wrong way. So I've got your back because I know the measure. I'm not going to let you go do something silly in print. But I've never told you what is up with 73, with 74, 75, 76. I want you guys to figure it out.
And not to read the Anchor article because that would be cheating.
In this particular case, that's good practice. In this particular case, the Anchor article is going to be confusing because he ran 5 studies and published them in 1 paper, and he used 3 different sets of items. So you'll still be like, I read it was a really cool paper. I'm glad I read it, but I still don't know what is up with the but I spent a while like, why do we not have them for the others? And the reason was because when we designed the study, we're like, this is too long. Let's cut these out because they don't affect the scoring. So Billette's code was right to not include them in the scoring. Same as SAFA's and other people's code would be correct not to include the impairment item as one of the core symptoms. And these things we have to figure out. We have to make those decisions. R will try to do whatever we tell it to do. And if we tell it to do something stupid and it can figure out how to make the data do something stupid, it will do a stupid thing for us and it will give us output. And if we only know stupid, simple rules for interpreting the output, we will make a mistake. And peer reviewers are supposed to protect us from ourselves, but peer reviewers are not magic. And if the mistake is at an earlier stage than what we're reporting, like the PHQ-9 thing, the peer review is not going to save us either. And we're not going to be exposed until somebody does a replication study. Be the replication crisis, or somebody does a meta-analysis and they're like, Youngstrom was an outlier. We have no idea what he was smoking when he published this one, but something clearly was not right. So back to this output. You guys have the code. This will generate the plots for all of your things. And somebody said, Rachel said, I don't know the measure. And somebody asked, what would you call them? Are they energy and mood or and she's like, I don't know. I I just ran the analysis and got the results. The one way of addressing the problem is look at what the authors said.
Yeah.
So you could go back, like Emma said, to the Anchor publication, and the oldest. Grace, do you know the Anchor publication for the HCL?
I
Do
know
you
it's
remember?
the
Do you remember who
2005
wrote it?
publication. Well, it's Jules Angst.
Yes, Jules Angst is the person that brought us the HCL. And in his oldest publication with it, he did a factor analysis, and he did it in 2 samples, an Italian sample and a French sample. And he looked at a plot similar to this and said, it looks like we're getting a similar number of things in Italy and France. And he gave them names. He gave them technical names that he thought were scientifically precise. And then somebody else, one of his co-authors, gave them cool, cool names. And Grace, what are the cool names?
Sunny and dark.
Sunny and dark. So sunny hypomania is the wee, I've got more energy, everything feels great, isn't life grand? And dark is also more energy, but it's dark, it's more irritable, it's more but that third one, that's like Pluto. Is that another planet? Is that not another planet? Should there be a third scale? Is there not a third scale? And honestly, I don't know what we're going to do with that yet. We need to, more research is needed. We need to.
And where on this, sorry, is there a way on all the output to show you which is, where is it showing what's loading onto each one?
Yeah, it will.
Okay.
It will. And we've got a couple different ways of trying to clean that up. But this is awkward. This is potentially very awkward because Jules Angst, I've already told you, is one of my heroes. But these data suggest that there might actually be another planet. There might be a Pluto that he ignored in the original paper. And everyone else is like, this is Jules Angst.
But this was only in France and Italy that he did it on, not in America.
Right. And thanks to Julia Lukács, we have country codes in here. So the HCL team could be like, we're going to bust out Europe as its own category and see if we then replicate angst.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Versus looking at the US separately, or that's super duper cool. And you guys have the data to do that, and that's super relevant. So Angst would be like, well, we already translated it. I don't think translations are going to change the behavior of the scale. Yeah, we don't know. This just became a more interesting question. All right, so quick like a bunny, can we do the scared and the PHQ-9?
Unless Maggie has the data set, I do not have access to it on this computer currently.
I got your back. So
go.
I will fire up the
Thank you.
scared. Well, can somebody share the PHQ-9?
I can share it.
Nice. Share away.
Boom. So I kind of want to, so now it's making sense to me why okay, so when I first saw this, I didn't know what the G6 SCMC was or anything.
Right.
But my theory is that PHQ-9, if you look at all the items, they're all mostly talking about this, it's all depression. It's not like it's the GBI where it's like depression and manic or whatnot.
Yep. Right. So here we're not, so this is our shortest scale of the evening.
Yeah.
K equals 9. K9 makes me think that's the name of the search dog that we're using to try to find Benson. Bravo K911.
Bravo.
So it's the shortest scale. This is the lowest alpha we have seen all night.
Yeah.
And team GBI would be like, in your face. And the team PHQ-9 would be like, you guys are all puffed up with your big number of items. That ain't real. And so what they would switch to instead would be look at our average correlation and compare that to your average correlation. This is pure homogeneity. Our items all correlating with themselves like alpha was supposed to tell us. And we don't see a big change between the raw alpha and the G6, which would,
in fact, it's lower.
This is not like, I wouldn't publish this as my main argument, but what this is telling us is this is probably a simpler factor structure.
Yeah.
When we look at the plot that Rachel just showed us for the HCL, it's probably going to look like it's basically measuring one thing, maybe one plus a Pluto, like we saw with that third one, but it's not going to be two really strong, clear planets. All right, can you scroll down and show me your the 9x8?
And Eric, you don't have to answer this right now, but just later, can you go over what it means whenever your G6 is lower than your alpha? Because we've talked about that it's why it would be higher, but
I've never seen that yet.
Well, and I guess it's only like 0.001 difference here.
Yeah, click on the last pane.
Number 2, that's the
number 2.
child.
So Emma, this is the first place where I was like, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. So how highly is this item correlating with all the others? Item 2 has got an average correlation of 0.06. What?
Yeah, and that R drop is like, get him out of here.
Right. And a rule of thumb for these, if we were making a short form and we were hunting for weak items, we vote them off the island if this is below a 0.3.
Yeah.
So you guys are getting, over the course of this Zoom, you're getting a sense of, I'm ambivalent about rules of thumb. They're helpful, but don't publish based on them.
Right.
They help us work quickly, but they're not perfect. They're not always right. If this is bigger than 0.3, it's a solid item. If it's much bigger than 0.3, we usually think of that as being a really good item.
And when I first saw this, I thought it was maybe reverse scored, but it's not.
Right. So this is the first piece of output where I'm like, something is wrong with that item, especially because this is a published scale, and especially because it's been published more than 1,000 times and translated into a bunch of languages. So this is something like if item 2 were this broken, somebody would have noticed it by now.
So it's probably
the probability that 1,000 people, 1,000 research groups all miss this is pretty low. So
and also, if you read the question, it's like the question is feeling down, depressed, or hopeless.
Yep.
That's like right on base. It has like, so it's definitely not the question. It's something wrong with the way it was programmed or put in or whatever.
Which is what it was. So it was a mistake in the Qualtrics.
Yeah.
Did I send the PHQ-9 group version 2 of the data?
No.
This is
All right, I've
all-
already fixed it for you. I have a new file that I need to send you now.
Yeah, because Sepa said that it was, that the reason why you didn't send it is because you wanted us to figure out why it was wrong.
And you
What
did.
was wrong.
You achieved your learning objective.
Well, how did we, well, we did, okay, well, I'll be honest with you. I realized I just didn't know what was wrong in the Qualtrics, like, how did it code wrong?
And I can show you during the after party because
Okay,
I know you're
because I didn't,
curious.
okay, because I didn't figure that out.
All right, so I'm gonna run slightly over, but show you the
Did you run it in SPSS first? When you first downloaded the Qualtrics, or did you run it straight into R?
our SPSS first.
Yeah. See, I don't have SPSS on, so I couldn't do that. Oh my God. Oh, I could, well, I have theories of what could have happened.
Okay. Let's not keep people late.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's to myself, not to you. And we're still recording, Colin?
Yes.
Excellent. What I did not do tonight was go through the slides that I sent about reliability.
24.
And I pointed you guys towards slides 1 through 22.
24. Oh,
24, I don't know.
24, I think.
So that's helpful for the big picture of what are the different kinds of reliability, what are the and that is what I actually use to teach my graduate class in assessment, and what I use sometimes when I'm doing continuing education workshops for people. So that stuff, that's good, that's accurate. And it gets pretty technical about the inter-rater reliability and the intra-class correlations and stuff like that. Is another HGAPS project. What Emma and I almost did was what we did do was take Hannah Baker from 13 Reasons Why and have people rate how depressed did they think Hannah Baker was on different scales. So we did fan fiction, psych nerd, filling out rating scales for severity measures. And at the time I was like, hey, we could look at inter-rater reliability and how well do Chase's ratings agree with Maggie's ratings, agree with
because one of them was actually for a clinician to fill out too. So
right.
like the Hamilton.
So now I've got the code, and we could actually close that loop and do that as a fun side project. And if you keep going through this deck, what also is in there is hey gang, let's try this at home. And so I orient you in the later slides, which I said don't look at. I talk about the global assessment of functioning, and then I present a bunch of cases and say from 1 to 90, how is this person doing? From 1 to 90, how is this person doing? Those slides are riffing on something that I got paid by Janssen to do for their rater training for one of their clinical trials. Jess Janis, one of my graduate students, was working as an RA at Harvard, and they flew her to hear that training. And so we've got the R code to go ahead and do the rater training that they.
Hi, Hannah.
So we've got all kinds of other goodies in here, but in the what do you need for tonight? Slides are for the big picture. The recording that we just did is super detailed about what are we getting out of the output. you guys learned rules of thumb. Most of the world thinks alpha, above 0.8, we're golden. And I'm like, no, that's not a great rule of thumb. We learned to look at the item total correlations and the average item correlations, and that's better, but most people aren't doing it. Why is it better? Other people will ask, because that's not contaminated by the number of items, and the world wants short forms. This doesn't penalize short forms for being short. We also, a meta lesson that we learned in this is that R gave us a huge amount of output. Some of it is what we went in looking for. Hey, there's my alpha. Some of it is stuff that we didn't know about before, but it's actually cooler than what we went in looking for, like G6 and the average correlation of every item with all the other items. A lot of it is technically interesting, but we don't care about. And what I would like to get to, when I was a graduate student taking my third statistics class, there were a bunch of clinical students in the class, and our professor was talking about matrix algebra and Greek stuff, and we're like, yeah, we know you're smart. And the clinical students basically are like, wake me when he starts showing us the output. Wake me when he tells us, literally, poke me. I'm going to be, you guys would be on your phones playing on the internet. I'm so old, we didn't have phones. Or
You were crocheting.
I don't know what I was doing, but I was piecing out, and I'm like, somebody poke me when we get to the output. What I would want to do, and I've got the tablet specifically to do, but I'm not there yet tonight, is save. And you guys are working in notebooks, so we're going to be able to knit the stuff. If I save the stuff as a PDF, I can take my tablet and I can mark up the PDF and circle the things, and like, we care about this column, smiley face.
That's awesome.
We can ignore
yeah.
these other columns. So that's exactly, I've still got a folder with my notes from statistics class, graduate statistics class 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
I've got notes with annotated output, and that's all that I kept from the class. I tossed all the matrix algebra stuff. I'm like, I'm a clinical psychologist, not a biostatistician. Damn
It'll
it.
be our treasure map.
So that's what I want to make. When you guys all have wiki accounts, where I'm also going with this is
we could upload that.
Right. So Rachel's figure that was really, really cool. Imagine on the HCL page, John and team being like, angst in the original, we're aware, angst in the original paper said it's basically 2 factors, but if you read that paper carefully, not all 32 of the items load on those 2 factors. And the ones that he cut from the other 2, he decided as a clinician, those are important enough, I'm not deleting them from the questionnaire, but they don't load clearly on either of the scales. That's an interesting choice. And those items that he cut are my leading guess for the dark matter that made Pluto, that made factor 3 there. I don't know that for a fact, but that's my hunch. That's where I would look first. So imagine Rachel's figure being Creative Commons licensed, CC BY 4.0, Rachel Kang, uploaded to the Wikiversity page, where John and Grace and team are like, we're aware that Ankh said 2 factors, and Hantouche and Peruggi suggested calling them sunny and dark. But as you look at our scree plot, you can see Pluto annotated, and Pluto has these particular items on it, and that's wicked cool.
Wouldn't that be crazy if peer review required you to submit your annotated output so they know if what you're saying is fact or crap?
I've asked as a reviewer, I've started asking people when I don't trust their analysis, or
Really? You're allowed to do that?
or the journal makes the word count so low that I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
I can't tell what you did. Send me your
Yeah.
code. I'm starting to ask.
And will they do it, or they say, I don't have to do that?
I'm asking at the top child psychiatry journal, and they really want the paper in. So they're like, okay.
They'll be
here it
like,
is.
okay, do you need my social security number too? Because I can give you that too, sir.
Right. I don't know that they would do that at a lower tier journal, but at the ones, I'm like, if you really want it in,
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So thank you for the extra 10 minutes. I'll send around the scared thing so that team is not gypped. If my stretch goal
And you
will
have
be to have the scared team be the one that I pull down as a PDF and mark up and send around with doodles on it, which Grace and Chase know is possible because I did that with their posters. So this is a skill that I already have. I just need Wi-Fi to do it.
Your Apple skills are becoming more advanced.
They're still fairly rudimentary, but
Don't forget, you also have to send the PHQ-9 team the corrected.
yeah. In the chat, toss me my homework.
Okay, do you want me to do it in Slack where I did the checklist like I did last time? For
Yeah,
you?
I found that today, actually. I know you made it a while ago, but I found it today.
Well, you know what?
Look,
I'm even
I'm
more
blushing.
impressed. No, I'm more impressed
Okay,
because
Colin,
you.
let's stop recording now.